African sauropods. Welcome guys once again to the channel, our Ranking with Dinosaurs, where we rank, you guessed it, dinosaurs. Now, today we're going to be following up with the Sauropod series videos, and I encourage you to watch the previous two episodes where we ranked South American ones and North American sauropods. And yeah, today we're going to be moving along to another continent. We're no longer in America, we're in Africa now. Now, there is some heavy hitters right here, like some very well-known ones, and I gotta say, I chose some more unknown sauropods. So we have a nice mix here. Again, not every single African sauropod, or we'll be here all day, but I did a nice selection of 8 sauropods. I think you're gonna like them. So we're gonna be starting with ATLASAURUS. Now we're gonna be starting with ATLASAURUS. Now, this is one of the more like unknown ones. This is from the Middle Jurassic, more like a medium to small size sauropod. You know, still big for today's standards. I mean, 22 tons is a lot. So ATLASAURUS is interesting. It's got some weird proportions. That's one of the most weird things about this genus specifically is the weirdness of like different parts of the body. Like the head, while not huge, is for sauropod standards pretty large, I want to say. The actual skull was found in a different locality. Like the main fossil, the type specimen, is fairly complete, but we didn't have the actual skull. We did found it in another place. If I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Guitoya Formation, something like that. But yeah, it's got a longish neck. I mean, for sauropods, it's actually kind of short. Not brachytrachelophane levels, you know, if you've seen the South American video, you know what I'm talking about, but, you know, pretty short, in my opinion. It actually has some insanely long limbs. Like, sauropods have pillar-like limbs. The front ones are, like, so long. Like, it's standing so tall. Like, the actual body is so far from the actual ground, so it actually has a weird looking profile, like from the side. I don't know. It looks like it's walking on stilts almost. I want to say. And for a sauropod, it actually has a longer tail. So ATLASAURUS, pretty peculiar looking one, not insanely crazy. It is closely related to Brachiosaurus, but you know it's not like a brachiosaur. So ATLASAURUS, I think I can start with a B tier. It's a weird-looking one, JOBARIA. Now, we're going to be keeping ourselves in Middle Jurassic, this time in Niger, where we got JOBARIA. Now, JOBARIA is a primitive sauropod, primitive for Middle Jurassic. It actually was found in a mass death site, so a bunch of different fossils were there, where probably a bunch of dinosaurs died. Not at the same time, but around the same time, you know. And we got from the actual JOBARIA specimen around like 95% of the actual skeleton. So that's pretty weird for a sauropod. So this was an incredible find. Now, when I say primitive, is that the its most primitive features were like their backbones and their tails, which were, I guess, in the words of paleontologists, simpler than later North American sauropods like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus, which were a little later in the Jurassic. But JOBARIA, being in Niger, Africa, they actually found that by some, I don't know what exactly they were actually researching, but they found out, they compared their limb structure to elephants of all things, and they came to the conclusion that it could actually rear up on their hind limbs, which was a thing for Brachiosaurus, if you guys remember. I mean, the original Jurassic Park has a Brachiosaurus just rearing up. And apparently today's not as widely accepted, but for JOBARIA is actually apparently it's a viable thing. So you can actually see it, and I think there's an Australian museum that has a JOBARIA mounted skeleton that is actually reared up. So that's fun. I guess. So, JOBARIA. It's nothing crazy about it. I don't love it. I don't hate it. So, nice, right next to ATLASAURUS. MALAWISAURUS. Now, MALAWISAURUS is a basolithostrophian titanosaur. So, it's a titanosaur from early Cretaceous in Malawi, yes. MALAWISAURUS is from Malawi. Who would have guessed? But no, yeah. It's actually found in the dinosaur beds in Malawi. It's in Malawi 3 times already. But yeah, it was kind of small for titanosaur. Usually titanosaurs, you think, you know, Argentinosaurus, something like this. But no, it was actually kind of small. We actually have some estimates after 2020 where it was not redescribed, but, you know, actually downsized a lot. Like, it went from 50 feet to 36 feet, and from 10 tons to 3 tons. That is, you don't want to get small in this time. But yeah, MALAWISAURUS actually discovered with a lot of the ossicles, which are dermal scutes, which are like covered by skin, and usually we see this in later titanosaurs as well. So I think we can actually say, like, with certainty, not certainty, but with a lot of basis, that a lot of later titanosaurs most likely had those scutes as well. And because people usually ask, like, oh, well, why? Because one titanosaur in, I don't know, South America was scarred with them. All of them have to have it. Well, MALAWISAURUS, titanosaur, early titanosaur, early Cretaceous was found with those as well. So MALAWISAURUS, I don't have to say that much about it. It's kind of small. I'm gonna say, might put it in F tier. I don't know. I'm not gonna be that harsh about it. I'm gonna put it in C tier. NIGERSAURUS. Now, gonna be moving on to NIGERSAURUS, a rebbachisaurus. We're gonna be talking about REBBACHISAURUS later, but a rebbachisaurus from the Middle Cretaceous in Niger. That's what the name comes from, NIGERSAURUS. And it was found in the LRAS formation. Sick formation is coming in the eventual formations video that I've been teasing. But yeah, you know, LRAS formation, very famous. Suchomimus comes from there. Oranosaurus as well. Bunch of really cool crocodilians. But this sauropod right here, I gotta say it, one of my favorite ones. The body build is not very, like, you know, insanely extravagant or anything. It's a fairly small sauropod, you know. It's around like 30 feet and weighs like 4 tons. But the crazy thing is the head, definitely. Miles away. One of the craziest looking heads of all time. So you got the actual skull, which is very light because it has a lot of the fenestrae holes. Fenestrae are to make I believe they're to make the skull lighter, and it had very thin bones. So it had those because it was very specialized in one thing, and that is browsing. What is browsing? Eating. It was eating a lot. It had a very wide muzzle, like the actual mouth was very wide, and it had a bunch of teeth in front. They were all in front. They were like 500 teeth, which is insane. 500 teeth that they were regularly just replaced. Apparently every 14 days, which is crazy, even crazier. But yeah, NIGERSAURUS, actual insane sauropod. Sorry about the noise if you could hear that. But yeah, there's actually some debate on how it held its head because it was very weird looking. So I didn't know if they usually just looked down, like they held it down like this because it was a low browser, or much more high up, like other usual sauropods. So NIGERSAURUS, I'm gonna say it right away, S tier. RAPETOSAURUS. Now, moving on to Madagascar. Yes, Madagascar. And we're going to go with RAPETOSAURUS, a titanosaur from the late Maastrichtian of Madagascar. Again, this is a very, very famous formation. You got things like MAGIRAFFATITAN and MALAWISAURUS, Simonsuchus. And it actually featured in one of the episodes in Prehistoric Planet, if you haven't seen it. But yeah, RAPETOSAURUS is very, I don't want to say famous, but is more well known because it has a typical Titanosaur build. However, it was like almost half the size of the actual big Titanosaurs, like Argentinosaurus or Paralatitan, which is from Africa as well. But yeah, you got one of the cool things, one of the cool finds of RAPETOSAURUS is actually a juvenile that we found, and we can actually theorize that it didn't need a lot of the parental care, like little to no parental care. That's why we think sauropods were most likely growing up, since they could grow up like, get to big sizes really quick. And yeah, sadly, this, I believe it was like 70, 80 days old juvenile, sadly died. We got the fossils to verify that, but yeah, probably died of starvation because this area in Madagascar was really arid, and the severe droughts that it would have experienced would have been very bad, very horrible. So RAPETOSAURUS, I'm gonna put an A tier. I really like it. The formation also is pretty cool, but I like Titanosaurs. REBBACHISAURUS. Now we're gonna be moving on to REBBACHISAURUS from the late Cretaceous of Africa and possibly South America. There is another REBBACHISAURID from South America called Rayosaurus, and it is very similar to our titular character here. So it could be the same animal. What it does do is that what it does help is that it gives validity to the theory that Africa and South America by this point in time were still connected, kind of ish. Like they still had some interspecies interchange. So REBBACHISAURUS is a part of Diplodocoidea, which makes these sauropods very long, horizontally long. Had the long neck. I know this is a very ugly toy, but I'm gonna be using this one. Had a really long neck, really long tail too. They're pillar-like limbs as well. However, one of the distinct things about REBBACHISAURUS is that it has this unusually tall ridge on the back, like this ridge right here. So we don't know if it was like a spine or a sail that it was covering all of its back, all the way from the neck to almost the base of the tail. But yeah, that is REBBACHISAURUS. Pretty weird. It actually had the small head. This one actually looks like it has a horse face almost. It's really disturbing, honestly. I'm gonna say, actually really like it's very distinct. I'm gonna put it in A tier. VULCANODON. Now this is volcano tooth. Pretty cool name. But yeah, VULCANODON is from the early Jurassic. So we're going back, very much back in time. And this one is interesting. So early Jurassic, we didn't know before when sauropods really went full on quadrupedal pillar legs, long neck style. But VULCANODON, being from the early Jurassic, actually gives us a very good view and a very good idea of when they started to do this. Since, prosauropods or sauropodomorphs, much better said, are direct ancestors from actual big-ass sauropods. But yeah, VULCANODON, being that, I don't want to say missing link, but, it was still a good find. Although incomplete, we don't have either skull or tail, I believe, that are known, but it is kind of a really primitive, still one of the most primitive. It was thought to be the oldest known sauropod, but no, I've actually found much more. But this one, being, very early in the sauropod, evolution, I want to say, it's really important. From the environment, we can tell that it was a very arid one, which actually puts a dent in the previous theory. Put a dent in the theory that sauropods were aquatic animals, since they were too heavy to be on land. But This guy being in almost, I don't want to say a desert, but, you know, in very dry areas where, like, yeah, they didn't, they were definitely land animals. Vulcanodon, it's nothing crazy. I was going to put it in C tier, but its importance and significance, I'm going to bump it up to B tier. GIRAFFATITAN. So we're going to be ending the tier list with the Titanic giraffe. Now this is an actual titan. This guy is from the late Jurassic period, Tanzania, from one of my favorite formations, the Tengaduru formation. Now, usually, what do we associate with Brachiosaurus? When we think of Brachiosaurus, we actually envision GIRAFFATITAN. Why? GIRAFFATITAN was originally described as a Brachiosaur species. However, more recent studies show that it actually had some differences. Big differences, but honestly, I don't think they're that huge. It's more because of the sparsity of the fossils of Brachiosaurus that, you know, GIRAFFATITAN is much better positioned to be named. So it is a Brachiosaurid, but, you know, very different. It has a very special, very characteristic looking skull. You know, the high crest that we associate with Brachiosaurids is from GIRAFFATITAN. The actual nostrils could be like in 5 different places. You know, they have the actual nares. We don't know where it is, but the holes for the nostrils, for the actual nose, like way right up here, like the olfactory ones. And yeah, really big, you know, living up to the Titanic giraffe name, you know, 85 feet, almost 50 tons. Pretty freaking Titanic, if you ask me. But yeah, I want to say, I think this video, you're going to see it way later, but we just got the Walking with Dinosaurs trailer, the new one. Looks sick, by the way. I know it's not in the actual show, it's not going to appear, but we need a Tengaduru formation. We need an episode of a paleo documentary in Tanzania around this time period. I would be so sick. Just saying out there. GIRAFFATITAN is going to be S tier. I mean, I love it. That's going to be it for the African sauropod tier list. Let me know. What would you change? What is your favorite African sauropod? Which ones did I left out? Again, I know I didn't cover every single sauropod. But I chose this 8. We can do part 2 if you want it. Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. It really helps a lot. Believe me. And we're almost to 300 right now. So I'm very thankful for that. Thank you guys once again. See you in the next video.